Episode 60, How to Lose Weight Without Counting or Calculating with Lisa Salisbury.
Welcome to Latter-day Life Coaches, the podcast where each episode is a conversation between me, Heather Rackham, and one of my amazing coach colleagues. Each coach here is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and certified through the Life Coach School. Together, we have one main goal, helping you live your best life no matter what. You ready for this conversation with the coach? Here we go.
We need food to survive, and yet for many, food can be a constant battle every day of what and how much to eat. But what if you could make peace with food and you don't have to count or calculate everything that goes in your mouth or eliminate any food from your plate? How would you feel if you could be the weight you want and have a positive relationship with all the food? Today on the podcast, Coach Lisa Salisbury is going to talk about how she helps her clients create a healthy relationship with their food choices by teaching them they don't have to eliminate anything and they can stop all the counting and calculating. If you have found yourself having anxiety and stress around food, you will find this episode refreshing with great takeaways so you can enjoy all the food you want and still maintain your ideal weight.
Today, I get to talk to Coach Lisa Salisbury, and I am excited for this conversation. Like always, I think I say that every single time. I wish you guys could see Lisa. She's got this cute festive sweater on. It's so fun. And it certainly matches her personality of being enthusiastic and fun to be with. But Lisa, introduce yourself to us a little bit so that we can learn a little bit more about you. Tell us who you are, who you coach, all the things.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me. It's so fun to be on your podcast. So I am a health and weight loss coach. I primarily coach women who want to drop their obsession with dieting and food and also still drop some weight. So I work with those that maybe have been really like tracking and calculating for a long time, and they're just tired of all that. They just want to stop having to manage an app. And I came to this work really because that was me. I think with most of us coaches, we're like, well, I used to do this. So, I have many diet books that I used to follow, and then apps came out and I was like, oh, fabulous. I will be able to track this on my phone and keep it close. And I just carefully tracked each meal, and I ended up macro tracking, and I just ended up getting so addicted and obsessed with tracking that I would eat regardless of if I was hungry or not. If my app was like, you have extra protein macros left over, I'm like, well, lunch meat it is in front of the fridge. And so I just came to this work because I was like, I just don't want to do that anymore. And I think there's other women out there. So I first started with a health coaching certification at Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And I really loved that work. It gave me a really good foundation with nutrition and all kinds of different diets that people might be on and how to get them into a more intuitive eating type of work. And then I realized a lot of my clients at that time, I would ask them like, do you need to know like what to eat more, or do you need to know why you're eating what you didn't plan, or why you're eating these things? And they, without fail, they all said, I need the why, except for the one guy I was coaching at that time. And he was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't ever emotional eat. So,
Except that one person. That's funny.
Well, and he was male. Like my husband does not relate to this work at all. He's like very confused about what women think about food. But in any case, I thought, okay, well, I need to really get more training with the life coach school model. I had been a client for years before that. I started with some personal coaching years before. And so I decided to go ahead and get that certification as well. So I have both of those, which give me a good background with both the nutrition side to be able to really talk about some like digestive issues and that sort of thing, as well as the thoughts that are coming up. So personally, I'm married, been married for a long time. What are we at? 25 years? I can't remember now. Is it
Oh, that's the same as me.
25 or
25
26?
years. Yeah.
Yeah, 25, something like that. And I have 4 kids ranging from 14 to, when does this come out? So he'll be 23. So also 2 at home and 2 in college.
Well, I am so glad to have you here today and to hear a little bit about that, your backstory. I think there's something interesting that happens when we delve like into that tracking and mapping of all of our food. And I think we start to, it's almost like we step away from the intuitive possibilities of, not the possibilities, but we step away from our own intuition, right? We don't know when we're hungry. We just eat because the app tells us we need to. And you find yourself, I love that you said that, eating lunch meat in front of the fridge. That happens to us physically, but I think we don't recognize that we also start to lose ourself. We start to lose our connection with who we are because we are dependent upon something else to tell us what we should or shouldn't do. And that doesn't just happen in that area. It starts to happen in other areas of our life as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I remember one diet I was on too. It was like very specific about what times you were supposed to eat. And so I had a timer on my phone and I would check it like, okay, 10 more minutes until I can eat. It was so crazy. Like, yeah, I didn't even bother to say like, you know what, you're hungry now, go ahead and eat. And if the timer went off and I wasn't hungry, didn't matter that either. I would eat the regularly scheduled programming. So
we're so fun, aren't we? This human species of ours. The things that we start buying into and the things that we think are important, we really start to lose track of the things that are important, our own personal desires, our own intuition, which we need help learning how to come back to that, I think. And I think that food is a fantastic place to start. Like learning to be intuitive there it almost goes hand in hand actually with learning to tune into you as a person, as a human being.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely end up coaching the vast majority of my clients. We either spend several sessions near the end, or they'll do another set of sessions to talk about their next thing they want to accomplish. Because they're like, I can't believe how well this worked with my eating. And they gain confidence and they're like, maybe I could work on this other thing. You know, I have a client that was like, remember that one time in that one session, you mentioned how like you could stop yelling at your kids. Could you teach me how to do that?
It's amazing though. I think we think there's like this magic, we have to do something separate for all the things in our life. And it's not like they apply to everything. So talking about the intuitiveness, and we know that it can apply to food. It applies in relationships. It applies in, business building, whatever it is. It just being human. We forget about the importance of that. Tell me how you help your clients then have a healthier relationship with food. And I'm assuming there is like kind of that intuitive piece there, and still lose weight, because I think for a lot of people, they're going to think that that's just not even possible. There's no way to have a relationship at all with food and still lose weight. It's almost like we have to disconnect in order for that to happen. But what does that process look like for you?
Yeah, I think like why you're eating is often more important than what you're eating. And so we first kind of try to figure that out. Like, are you stressed or tired or bored? Or is this just a habit? Do you just habitually have a snack when the kids come home from school because they are? So we have to look at why. And then we figure out like what you truly want. Because when we get really clear on like why they're interested in changing their food choices and what they really, really, really want, then we can say like, do you really want a second helping of lasagna? Or do you want to go to bed feeling light, sleep well, and wake up not bloated? Like, what do you really want? Like, it tastes good, yes. And then when we're like, wait, what do I really want? I actually want to feel better tomorrow, like immediately. It's not this long term, like I'm going to lose weight in 6 months, but like right now, what do you really want? Do you want that afternoon snack of chips and cheese? Or do you want to be hungry for dinner when your family is eating so that you eat together? Like there's some real immediate things we can want that can help us to make decisions with food from really excellent places. It's not like I shouldn't have this extra helping of lasagna because I need to lose weight. We go to other reasons, and then it ends up helping us create this relationship with food that is more serving to you. That food is really about like what you really want. When you just think about food as like, I should lose weight, so I should or shouldn't eat this thing, it just doesn't have the same impact as how is this going to feel in my body? How is this food going to affect me? Like, do I want to have dessert after lunch, or does that make me feel sluggish in the afternoon? So we really want to pay attention to how it feels like in the body. In fact, I just did a session and my client said, okay, I had this one overeat, and she was telling me about it. And I was like, and how did that make your body feel? Like, we want to be really in touch with that, because we don't want to just gloss over like, oh, yeah, I felt nauseous, I was bloated, like all of those digestive symptoms that we don't want. Like those are things we don't want, right? So we start with those like immediate results, because the weight loss takes so much longer. Sometimes it's hard to stay focused on that with that food relationship. So we want to get really good at knowing what foods work for us.
And I actually have another question for you. Do you think it's possible to have a better relationship or have a good relationship with food and want to lose weight? Like, how do you separate it from like making food be the enemy? You know what I mean? Like, because I think there's still always that piece there that we always kind of feel like food's the enemy if we're trying to lose weight.
Yeah, because when every food choice is, will this food help me lose weight or not? Then food is definitely the enemy. When we label food good or bad based on if it's going to help us lose weight, then we end up being good or bad when we eat it. And so all foods are on the table for my clients, and then they get to choose which ones work best for them. So I do think it's possible to have a good relationship with food and lose weight. If you have weight to lose, that weight will naturally come off as you stop eating too much volume of food. And it's not as simple as calories in versus calories out, because like I said before, I don't have my clients count calories at all. But there is a matter of when we take in more than we need to function that day, we don't get sick. Our body's just like, it's no problem. I'll just store that for you. I'll just store it here for later. And that's our bodies working exactly as they should. And when we decide, I think I want to take a little of this weight off, then we're just telling our bodies, we're going to access that food that we stored. We're just going to access that now for energy. And so we take in less because we're going to access the onboard fat stores, right? So food isn't the enemy, just like fat on our body is not the enemy. It's just fuel. And we can totally still enjoy it and eat dinner with friends and family and have togetherness around food, and also eat just the amount you want. One of my big like mantras is, I decide when and what I eat. Food is not an enemy to me, but I'm in charge of it. I'm deciding. When you have the thought, I decide when and what I eat, food is not the enemy, because you make the decisions. It's neither good nor bad. You just decide.
It's learning to trust, right? I think there's a trust piece. And this just goes with the intuitive thing that I talked about earlier. We have forgotten how to trust ourselves in so many ways.
Yes, totally. And that's exactly where I was with like, depending on the diet app to tell me what to eat. It was like I had no idea what worked for my body. I was like, I don't know. If someone was like, what should you eat in order to maintain your current weight or to gain some weight or to lose some weight? I would be like, I don't know, because I always had depended on someone else to tell me what to eat.
Yeah. It's like, I don't know, let me check what this app is telling me what I need to do. Let me input it here and see what calculations come out. Yeah. So, I mean, you've talked about all the different books that you've had and apps that you've used. And we've all read different nutritional studies and they're easy to come by. I mean, we can read them scrolling through Instagram. I can see in 5 minutes, 2 or 3 different studies, right? What do you subscribe to? What's your favorite? Where do you go when it talks about, but when your clients ask you about that?
So some of them have come to me and they're on a current diet. Like, well, I prefer to eat keto, or I eat in this way. And sometimes they'll have names for them and all of that. And you can find hundreds of different diets and nutritional studies to back them up. This is best because, and it does work for some people. And that's why it's out there. I mean, you can even find diets that are like fruitarian, like they literally only eat fruit. Like, that sounds delicious. But I know that wouldn't work for me because I need more protein. And the way I found that out is because the most important nutritional study I've ever read is the one I did on myself. And that's what I tell my clients. We have to study what works for you. And we call that bioindividuality. Basically, one person's food is another person's poison, right? That's why these fad diets tend to fail most people in the long run, right? Because it worked for that one person that invented it and maybe a handful of people, but what your friend is doing might not work for you. So we have to determine like what foods work best for you. Most women that come to me have some digestive issues. And a lot of us think like, oh, gas and bloating, we're going to get a little TMI here. Gas and bloating, like, that's normal. Everyone has that. Like, no, it's really, really not normal. You do not have to live with bloating, even as a woman. Like, you don't have to live with that. And the way you determine is to write down what you're eating and to write down what digestive symptoms you have. Or is your sleep disturbed? Like, I have a client that's really working on her sleep, and she's realized she's got to move that last meal. Like she does not do well if she eats past 6 or 7 because of her sleep. And it has nothing to do with her weight loss. It's like, I don't sleep well if I am still digesting. And so she's figured that out, not because someone's like, here's the diet rule, don't eat after 7. It's because she knows her sleep is better if she goes to bed feeling light. So you just want to track the things that are an issue for you or that you want to improve on that. And now it sounds like, wait, didn't she just say we're not tracking? Didn't she just say like she doesn't do diet apps? Like, yes, I did. We don't use any, like I like them not even to use their phone at all. We use paper and pencil. Just any kind of notebook. We just write it down. There's no need to weigh and measure. We don't need to have like, well, I ate a half a cup of oatmeal and 72 berries. That would be a lot of berries, but we don't need that kind of information. We just need to know I ate oatmeal and berries and where you were on the hunger scale, which gives us an idea if you were over full or not. Because sometimes just eating more than you need is what's causing your bloating. So sometimes just an excess of food and that work that it's required to digest. And so if you notice, oh, my bloating has gone down just by not having seconds, it's not just because you had less food for weight loss. Like, it really can cause more bloating to be eating too much for your body. So we write it down without weights and measures, but we use the hunger scale to determine if that was the amount of food that's working for you. It's a big concept in my program, like the nutritional study and doing that food journal. And it really does make a huge difference.
Yeah. And it's a study on yourself. I think for me personally, as I've tried to step away from this diet mentality at all, I actually noticed I was experiencing that just because of the anxiousness that I was having around food. And when I was able to step away from the anxiousness around food, it didn't matter how much I was or wasn't eating. It was just stepping away from feeling anxious at all and giving myself permission. With all of it, the bloating went away as well. So there's so many different reasons why bloating can occur. And I think it's so fascinating what happens when we do try to pay attention and figure it out on ourselves.
Yeah. You just can't change what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same thing with money. And I know we've had some money coaches on the podcast. Like, if you're not looking at your money, if you're not looking at what's happening, going in and out, like, you can't possibly know what the problem is. And that is more quantitative than what we need to be about food. But if we just want to see like, what are the foods that we're eating? And also we do a little tracking on what are the foods I'm wanting to eat that I'm choosing not to. What am I craving? And then we plan those foods in to make sure that we're meeting all of our needs and desires.
So you talked a little bit about somebody bringing you cookies this time of year, or the goodies that arrive at our door during the Christmas season. In our minds, there's a piece of willpower that has to exist in order to maybe not eat those cookies if that's what our goal is. And I think willpower is a really interesting thing to talk about. I think it's something that we have a lot of shame around. I don't know, give me your thoughts on willpower.
Yeah, totally. We do create tons of shame around it. And willpower is completely overrated as a tool for dieting, because it's what we all think, like how many times we've heard like, oh, if I just had more willpower, I could do this. But then we end up blaming ourselves, assuming there's something wrong with us if we can't. But we want to draw on more useful emotions, because frankly, I describe willpower similar to a muscle, because the more we use it, the more it wears out. It's why we don't generally eat chocolate cake for breakfast, right? Because in the morning we're fresh. That muscle is fresh. It hasn't been used. And so we're like, yes, I'm going to eat eggs, right? And then as we go through the day and our different emotions that increase, and the kids and the stress and the husband and the work, and we're like willpowering our whole way through, by the evening, most of my clients struggle in the evening, and they're like, it's just the evening is my problem. And I'm like, the problem is you've been using willpower all day and you're tired. If you were going to do a bicep curl with a 1 pound weight in the morning, you'd be fine. And in the afternoon, you're like, I'm kind of getting tired. And by evening, you would be like, I cannot lift this one more time. It really, like when you think of your willpower that way, it's really helpful. You want to draw on a powerful emotion like commitment, because that brings us back to, again, what we really, really, really want. And I do a commitment exercise where I have my clients come up with 25 to 50 reasons why they want to reach the goals that they've set. And we narrow that down to the top 3 to 5 so they can keep those in mind. So they come up with really why. Because when my clients first come to me, they go, I want to lose weight to be healthier. Like, that's a terrible reason. Nobody says no to cookies because they're like, I want to be healthier. It just is not powerful enough. And that's why we draw on willpower. We have to dig deep and figure out why we really want to do it. And then we can be committed to those reasons. So I also teach them how to allow a craving to be present without reacting to it, which is a great skill that also does not rely on willpower, because willpower holds tight. We push the craving down, and in general, it's very tense in the body. Whereas allowing a craving is relaxing into it. There's no pushing down, there's no tension. And so I teach them to feel that craving, recognize it for what it is, which is an emotional desire for food, and allow it to pass. We just allow for the cravings to be present. And some coaches will talk about this, like feeling your feelings and that sort of thing. But with cravings that come up over and over again, we want to allow them to be there and then make a plan to have that food if it's continuing to come up, because we want to figure out, like, why is that continuing to come up? And so we don't continue to push it down. So between the two ideas of allowing the craving as well as depending on our commitment instead of willpower, they really find that it's not as difficult to make the choices because they're not relying on that really worn out muscle of willpower.
This is one of those areas when listening to you talk, this tool that you use for weight loss of allowing is very present in everyday life too. When if weight loss isn't our goal, but there's other goals that we have that we're trying to achieve, learning to allow emotions and let them be there rather than thinking that we have to hurry and get rid of them is the key to anything we want in our life. We have to learn to sit with emotions that we don't necessarily like.
Yeah. And a lot of times we don't want to sit with that emotion. And so we're like, oh, you know what's going to make this better? some pretzel. We'll just have some crunchy snack and then it'll be loud and then I won't have to listen to the thoughts in my head.
It's always the thoughts in my head. Always the thoughts. I was meditating actually this morning is something that I try to do. And it was a guided meditation. And the person who was going through the meditation was talking about kind of that chaos that we have in our brain. And one of the things that we do when we're experiencing that chaos, which for me, there's a lot of chaos, always a lot of thoughts just bombarding me, is we like zone out and just go nowhere. And which isn't meditation. Meditation is when we're still present and we're focused. And I just noticed that I'll zone out and nothing productive happens. And because I don't want to experience that chaos, and I don't know where I'm going with this other than I just think that that's a very interesting thing that we do. We just want to get rid of something. We don't want to experience it. So whether it's like the pretzels, or for me, it's a lot of just zoning out and not accomplishing anything. It's just so interesting how we learn to cope and what we do with all of that.
Yeah. Which of course is then a discussion on buffering, which I know we've had. I know you've mentioned that on the podcast before. And so what do we use? We use food for buffering, or when you're zoning out, maybe that means you're like scrolling on Pinterest. Like that's me. I'm like, I'm never going to make any of this stuff, but I'm still just like scrolling so I don't have to think. So that is, the buffers that we use to not feel those negative emotions.
So one of the other things I heard you say is that there's nothing that is off the table for your clients. Everything is, there's no good or bad. It's all there. And you're trained through the life coach school, as are all the coaches that are here. There is certain protocols that the life coach school teaches. And some people here listening may or may not be familiar with that. Mm-hmm. And so for those who are familiar with that and are thinking, well, wait, you're a life coach school trained coach, and they typically teach to lose weight this way. Tell me what you've gotten rid of, or what you've added in.
I think probably what you're getting at is the concept of no sugar, no flour, no flour, no sugar. Sometimes they'll abbreviate in their content NFNS. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I just don't think this is necessary to lose weight. I just don't. And that's the main reason I let it go, is because anytime we eliminate a certain food group, it requires an immense amount of thought work. And to me, it's not work worth doing to say, I'm just never going to eat those things again. It requires so much thought work that we get bogged down with all of that. And we're not paying attention to all the stuff that we do want to eat. So I prefer to use a concept called crowding out, which is what feels good in your body. What do you want to eat? Instead of saying we're not going to eat these things, we want to decide what we want to eat. I want to eat more vegetables. I notice I don't have any fruit in my diet. I want to eat these things. And as we incorporate more things that we want to eat, like I really want to eat more sweet potatoes. Well, if you're going to serve a sweet potato for dinner, you're probably not also going to serve pasta. So you've eliminated that flour-based item, but not because you decided pasta was the devil. It's because you're like, I really want to learn to like sweet potatoes. I really want more vegetables in my diet. And so we crowd out things that don't make us feel amazing. So flour and sugar can totally be eaten, but most of my clients find that they don't actually want to. When we get down to those like real, like, what do you really, really want? And how does food feel in your body? They're like, I don't feel great eating sugar 3 times a day. I think I would feel better if I ate sugar twice a week, or in what frequency they desire. And then that becomes what their kind of protocol is, because they're like, actually, this is what I really want. It's not because sugar is bad and I should eliminate it at all costs. That's how I kind of differ. Like, if you want to give up flour and sugar, we totally can do that. And I do have a client that's working on giving up sugar because it causes her joint pain. It is inflammatory, and she's older, and she's like, I just want to keep hiking into my 70s. And so I'm like, yeah, let's do it. She still sometimes has it as a planned exception every like once a week, but it's just not built into my program as a requirement. Whereas it totally is with the life coach school. It's like from day one, no flour, no sugar. And I'm like, that's a diet. I don't have my clients do anything. They don't make any changes that they don't feel like they can do forever. Because as soon as you're like, I'm never going to eat flour and sugar again, fairly unrealistic. To live in this world and have children. And I just don't find that it's necessary, is I think the main thing. It just seems like you're very much on a diet. And I want my clients to feel like when we end our coaching sessions, that they're like, nothing changes the next week, as opposed to something like a Whole30 where the time frame is literally built into the name. In 30 days, I can have a cupcake. I don't want them to make any changes that they don't want to continue doing the day after our coaching sessions end.
I really like that you brought up that it's just not worth, you can coach yourself around it, but it's, you said you don't think it's worth all of the thought work that it takes to do that. And I think there are some things in our life that are worth the thought work, right? Like it's kind of like picking your battles. There's some things that are non-negotiable for me. I will always do the thought work necessary to have a better relationship with my children or with my husband or with the people in my life. Like those aren't negotiable, but I really am going to pick my battles and the other things that I choose to do the thought work on, because it does take up time and space. And for some things, it's just not necessary. And it takes away from the other things in our life that we do want to spend the time on. Well, Lisa, this has been fantastic. I have loved this conversation, and I'm wanting to know where people can find more of you.
Yeah. So I'm pretty active on Instagram. That's my main place. So on Instagram, it's well_with_Lisa, but you can also just search my first and last name, Lisa Salisbury. Most of that double posts to Facebook, but I don't do anything extra special over there. So, but you can follow me on Facebook at Well with Lisa. I have a website also, wellwithlisa.com. And I also have a free ebook, which is Drop the Obsession and the Weight. And I think we'll put the link in the show notes. And that just basically gives an overview of my first 3 tools that I teach my clients. So you can get kind of an idea of, and some of them we talked about today.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll link to that there, and all the other things as well. We'll just link to it in our show notes. I think will be an easy place for everybody to find. So thank you. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Hey, we just wanted to thank you for spending part of your day here with us at Latter-day Life Coaches and being part of this conversation. Share this with your friends so that you can have a conversation with them on this topic as well. And as always, subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a good one, my friends.